IgNar's not going to be allowed to get his hands on Rakan. We know Mithy doesn't really play it a huge amount, at least on stage. And it is one of G2's most banned champions. Tristana is screaming at me right now, still open and available.
Gnar is also available for Misfits. They're probably expecting the Tristana ban so that they can then first pick that strong top laner. There it is. Very expected to go for Alphari. Was very regularly picked in this series versus Fnatic as well.
Could also just go Xayah and get the best of the remaining AD carries. But the thing is, the Sivir worked fine. He went even in lane against the Xayah. Also due to support matchups, the Alistar just kind of neutralizes a lane for the Sivir. But still, the Xayah was very contested yesterday.
But instead,
we're going Orianna.
It is a Misfits special. I mean, if there were a team that would have slightly different priorities, it might be a squad like Misfits.
But you gotta think to yourself, like, Syndra for PowerOfEvil was so good here in the playoffs because Maxlore could camp that lane so easily. They will not get the same value out of Orianna.
And now we're seeing a mid lane power pick once again for PerkZ. He went for the LeBlanc game 1. He's likely going to pick up this Lucian in game 2. I don't think we're going to see any surprise AD carry or top lane Lucian.
Deficio, Vedius, do you know how many games PerkZ has played on Lucian? 7. His win-loss is 2 and 5. While in lane, he's okay. He's up 8 CS at 15 minutes. The team has not played around their pick exceptionally well.
It's also tied into the fact that, remember what we talked about in game 1 where PerkZ is the kind of player that will stick around for that extra bit of farm. He doesn't mind overstaying a little bit on a side lane. He will regularly be punished throughout the game. And once you get into that mid-late game portion, it just seems difficult for G2 to really properly utilize the Lucian mid.
Strong bot lane coming in here from Misfits. More playmaking potential for IgNar compared to the Trundle. No surprise with the Sivir here from Zven. Works well against Thresh and, of course, against Xayah, as we saw there in the last game. And still, plenty of supports available for Mithy to play. Things like Tahm Kench and Morgana are ones that can deny a lot of pick potential from a Thresh.
Wouldn't be surprised if we saw a lot of support bans now coming out from the side of Misfits, things like the Tahm Kench being taken away, but also for G2, they now want to take away these jungle engage tools, things like the Sejuani. You could also consider banning away the Maokai, but we haven't seen a huge amount of focus for Maxlore. I actually feel like this could very well be a Rengar game coming out from the Misfits jungler.
Just play around bottom side after level 6 where you have the CC setup from IgNar could definitely be a possibility. If you are Misfits, you have to consider the fact that it's a Lucian mid lane. So normally teams want to run an AP top laner. Cho'Gath can add a bit of AP damage, so he's now banned away. Rumble is one of the other champions, and then AP Cannon is still being used in some regions, and something Expect might want to play.
And the Gnar is still open as well. Both of these top laners very comfortable on that pick.
But you got to keep in mind, if Misfits blind pick the Gnar, it actually really sets up the AP Cannon for Expect as a lane counter pick to Gnar specifically. So G2 are not banning away Gnar. They do have Gragas to add some magic damage from the jungle. Yeah. But again, you always got to consider that top lane pick when you have a Lucian.
But even into a Gnar, we've seen many top lanes still pick the Rumble into it because during the laning phase, it still does fine. And in the mid game, once you've gotten an item or an item and a half, that Rumble can have a lot of team fight value, and Misfits showing their respect towards it.
Let's see if they're actually going to save last pick for Expect. It would make the most sense. Just pick your support here. Alistar also available. Like, there are like so many picks here for Mithy to go for. All these different tanks are fine against the Thresh.
He does tend to play a little bit more of the reliable picks. The Blitzcrank being a little more risky, dare I say. All in if those rocket grabs don't pay off. The Alistar was a great combination. It is locked in, and it helped PerkZ to survive that laning phase in game number 1.
So now Misfits, this is where they need to lock in that jungler and top laner. We talked a little bit about the Rengar. This could be an option. Or maybe Maxwell just goes for the standard Zac. There is the risk against things like an Alistar and a Gragas, but also a Sivir with the spell shield. Zac still struggles on getting onto this backline, but it is something that he's had a lot of comfort with in the past.
All right, gonna go Shen instead. And of course, the calls here from the Parisian casters. French crew, what is your profession? And what is your region? EU. What is the jungler they lock in?
Oh, with Maxlore, it is hard to say. Again, we are looking at Rengar, of course, with Shen as one of the options. Kayn is also something he's played before here. He just goes for that cat in the jungle.
Knife cat, baby.
I am a little bit concerned about Alphari once again, though. The fact that he's not being put on any comfort at all. The reason he can't pick the Gnar, as we highlighted, is due to that cannon counter pick that Expect could play. But the fact that he's once again on a tank, it's just not his wheelhouse.
And what does Expect run into it then? A number of options, of course. If he locks in this Maokai, I believe that's going to be the first Maokai of Summer Split for Expect in the top lane, and it is locked in. So got that front line, not the highest amount of AP damage, but that's a great defense for those double ADCs.
And as you rightly said, yes, it is a very solid front line for the Lucian and the Sivir to play behind, but there really is a lack of AP damage. Trick, he may decide to go for the early AP jungle item, so there's a bit of additional burst there, but predominantly the damage will be coming from PerkZ and Zven. So in terms of itemization, Misfits are setting themselves up for success, especially in the later game.
Yeah, it's actually, fun enough, two comps that seem fairly hard to execute. Like, kind of the name of the game in Europe have been the easier comps instead, like double tanks in the front, 2 safe carries in the back, and you just kind of collapse into each other in big 5-on-5s. But when you play like Rengar Shen, that's a lot of coordination that needs to work here. Maxlore needs to be on point with his ultis and that pick potential he offers. And as you highlighted, the lack of AP damage on G2 could be an issue.
Oh, let's see how this works out, of course. Both coaches, Hussein and Joey, shake hands as they leave stage. G2 are up 1-0 in the championship series. And at the beginning of the day, we said that Maxlore, if there were a jungler on this stage to play some fun champions, the Rengar is the first in the series. Let's hope it's not the last, Vedius.
I'm excited for the ball delivery system, QuickShot. You have a Rengar, invisible. You put the ball on him, you put a Shen on ultimate on top of him too. You have a lot of stuff appearing out of nowhere on top of those carries in the backline. We said in game 1 there was no backline threat. There's a lot of it this time around.
Oh, that's definitely the case. Sven Sivir very, very safe in game 1 because the flanking options were limited. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a brief pause here in Paris as we get more information on that one. The crowd is being hyped up as we get ourselves ready for game 2.
Jesus in the crowd as well. And while Alphari was not set up to succeed in terms of dealing damage, Shen versus double AD carry is very, very effective. You know, he can block a lot of autos, he can stack a lot of armor as well once we get into the late game. So that is one of the main reasons behind the pick for him. But if you look at this G2 comp, like, you have 3 massive tanks. Some of the biggest tanks you can get in the game. So while there is backline threat on the side of Misfits, there's a lot of tanks you gotta get through first.
Let's see how much armor Alphari can stack up. As you can see on your screen, our audio technicians are working with Hansama, who reported an audio issue as he's loading up. Might be something like, it's hella loud in here, guys. Every time I'm on camera, this crowd starts doing things like this. Chanting for Hansama, who, by the way, turned 18 yesterday. Xayah in the crowd. Let's see whether or not French Xayah cosplay. How about Hansama's Xayah in-game?
So in terms of the early game for both these teams, Rengar, not the strongest of early game junglers. Usually he's waiting for around that level 6 mark. While Gragas can have a bit more of an impact, you look across the board and he does have a few options. Maybe he can go top lane. You have a fair amount of CC with the Maokai in terms of setup. Maybe you can get a flash, a kill onto Shen, a possibility. In the mid, there's no real setup because of the Lucian, but there is a lot of damage to follow up as well. And in the bottom lane, you've always got an Alistar and a Sivir, so that's always a pretty good lane if you want to try and get some early ganks.
Oh, I love the fact that Trick can actually play around mid and bot lane so easily. Thresh, you just jump him as Alistar, and then you gank the Thresh and you kill him. He's super squishy early on, and mid lane, you always want to apply pressure as a Lucian and have him win his lane against Orianna. That's why you pick him. That's why G2 are not finding success on him, because while they can win lane with it, as soon as they get out of laning phase, they can't do anything.
Deficio, I absolutely love hearing you discuss this mid lane Lucian. Sometimes it's very critical discussion, but do you think this team composition will be easier for G2 to execute in comparison to what we saw during the regular season? Or do you think we're going to see the same problems over and over?
I think there's a high chance we can get some of the same problems.
Oh, let's see.
I think Lucian mid is so good if you can play 1-3-1 split push. You have a Maokai top, and you're against the Shen Rengar. Those guys will punish you if you go to the side lane, and just kill you so easily. But it all depends on PerkZ early game. If he gets ahead, he can do well.
Okay, PerkZ, let's keep our eyes on this Lucian performance because he's convinced it's a great pick. Somebody else's performance who I am keeping an eye on, along with many, many thousands here, is QuickShot. Quick shout out, it was his birthday yesterday, 18 years young, and he's playing here in Paris in his first EU LCS final.
Happy birthday, QuickShot.
Yeah, happy birthday,
a day
right
late, but to be able to play
and
in
it's also
front of your
18
home
years
ground.
old, Trevor. Just because you are 30 doesn't mean that 18 is young these days.
Oh,
but I mean, it's still a very young player who's playing in front of a very big crowd. And game one, his performance wasn't awful, but as you rightly identified, Deficio, he wasn't truly able to get a big advantage in the bottom lane and become a carry for the side of Misfits.
And I just want to go back to your point, Trevor, about PerkZ and his confidence in this Lucian. Fun story. After every game where G2 loses with the Lucian, he goes like, this champion is so useless. I just cannot win on this champion. I don't know what's going on. A few days later, when you talk to him again, he's like, Lucian, man, it's so strong. It is so good, man. I'm winning every scrim with this champion. I really hope we get to see that scrim improvement now on stage with Lucian, because it's actually not about PerkZ individually. It's about G2 as a team around him.
Yes, exactly. And like I said, PerkZ has been +8 CS on that champion. He's 2 wins.
I mean, you better if you pick Lucian.
As Maxlore takes a early bop to get that savagery counter sticking up, or fury counter rather. Gonna get a heavy-handed pull here from QuickShot and IgNar. So let's see what early shenanigans he can get up to. But similar story on the other side as Trick is gonna get a helping hand from Zven and Mithy, and both lanes then reset to standard.
So junglers will be passing towards the top side of the map. We talked about the possibility of early ganks, but unlikely that we'll be seeing them from either jungler in the top side. The mid lane will really be one of the big focal points, as we were discussing earlier on. You can already see a huge amount of pressure being applied by the Lucian. The important thing to remember when playing Lucian mid is, a while back, he was really popular, MSI especially. That's where we really saw some of his strengths. But then he got a bit of a nerf to his Q. The extra mana cost means that if you keep spamming it, you're going to very quickly run out of mana, and that pressure suddenly disappears. So just be aware of how often PerkZ will always position slightly in front of the minions and try and harass with basic attacks to force PowerOfEvil back out of that lane.
I want to see how much damage he takes in reply. Felt like game 1, PerkZ was losing out some of those trades into Orianna. All right, a lot of questions to be answered as the game plays out. Maxlore's going to spot out Trick. While that's going on, we get our first death sentence. Goes fishing and catches a Mithy. Ends up making a few trades. And it's the jungle back and forth. Both junglers get knocked over the wall, but good vision there. So Trick and G2 will be aware of Maxlore's decision making.
Maxlore forcing PerkZ to move into the jungle as well and be at least there for Trick in case another fight breaks out. And PowerOfEvil gets to push his lane now. Maxlore here with the early invade, because also the Shen pushing top lane. All
right, once again, back and forth. The death sentence curves around. Mithy forced to use exhaust onto QuickShot, down to 110 HP. Ignite is burning down. It ends up being a 2-for-1 summoner trade in favor of Misfits. The Flay once again, by the way. The trade's not over. IgNar's death sentence, 1 second on cooldown. Not yet going to go for it. Instead, the Lantern comes out.
Apologies for cutting you off there, Trevor, but I was just excited to see QuickShot and IgNar really stepping up in this game too, putting a lot more pressure down onto the G2 bottom lane. And they're winning out on a few more of these early trades. We did see them do a similar sort of thing in game 2, but this time there is a pretty significant CS discrepancy going in the favor of Misfits bottom.
Oh, they're still up here. Maxlore refuses to let Trick get that red buff. PowerOfEvil is nearby. Shen is pushing the top lane again.
We just keep looking bottom. It's going to be another fight. All right, headbutt pulp comes down. QuickShot takes a very short ride on that Lantern, but no further summon is blown.
It's important to highlight that the range advantage... Oh, actually, let's see Trick. Maxlore playing that very, very aggressively, but again, he knows he has to back off. Bot lane, though. Level 2 came first behind QuickShot and IgNar to use the Thresh range advantage to get that early lead and give them a massive CS advantage here early on.
IgNar going for an early roam. Gets some vision down into the jungle before he's forced to back away. And that CS advantage that you mentioned, Vedius, plus 13. 2 full waves that Zven is now needing to catch up. He's alone in lane, so that'll help a little. And obviously Alphari under some pressure top. Expect is already backed. TP to return, and he's ushered that lane all the way to Alphari Shen.
But I want to bring it back a little bit to this bottom lane because Zven, he had a very impressive performance in Game 1. He was one of the big carries alongside PerkZ. And when you think about the success of this bottom lane, there was a lot of doubt as to whether or not they were still considered the best bottom lane in the West. But I feel like with their playoff performance and with their Game 1 performance, you can see how they really did earn that title and how they're on their way back to it.
Exactly, and like the analyst desk was saying earlier today, Zven and Mithy are the kind of players that will ramp it up when it is necessary. It is a long season. They did not take that break at the beginning of the summer split where they came back from MSI, helped carry the G2 sub-squad to some wins. Arguably looked better than the regular G2 squad for several weeks. In large part to Zven and Mithy. And now they're making a big case once again. They got chunked out in Game 1, survived, and let's see what they can do now. Still down 16 CS.
And you two thought that you had a good relationship. Well, those two are the longest standing European bottom lane in history. So
I will have you know, Vedius, that Trevor and myself have not missed a final since Season 5 of the LCS.
Oh, that's very good. That's
casting
very good.
together, obviously.
That's very good.
I don't see any players here doing exactly the same.
But Zven and Mithy do have an impressive track record, and we'll have to track if they can make up for this early deficit that they have been put into by Hans Summer and IgNar.
Let's see what IgNar can do, because he's found very many death sentences. The Lantern, all right, gonna get available. Interrupted!
Oh.
Mithy's on a good spot. Hans Summer's gonna get stunned up. The Flay buys some time. Hans Summer actually moves forward. Remember, there's no unbreakable will. Blade Caller calls those feathers back. Sven's run out of mana. He's going to be dropped low. Summon a heal available for Hans.
And while all this is happening, Maxlore is trying to reach level 6 as fast as possible, because then he can suddenly join the bottom lane and actually kill Mithy or kill Zven. Same for mid lane here. PowerOfEvil is doing more than fine because PerkZ constantly had to go up and try and help Trick. He couldn't just perma-push the lane. Maxlore was always around as well, and it's actually meant now that Misfits are doing really well here in the early laning phase without even having their jungler hit level 6 yet.
Maxlore's about 20% of the way through to level 6. Alphari is level 6, so Stand United is up and available. Means G2 have to be extremely calculated when they decide to go in.
Also bear in mind, this mid lane difference, PowerOfEvil is doing another great job of holding his own in the 1 versus 1. Thanks to a few of that early pressure, once again exerted by Maxlore. Forced PerkZ to play more reserved. He had to try and move back, help out his jungler, see what Maxlore was doing. Could he get a collapse or not? Oh, I still have to deal with this mid lane Orianna, and because of all those shenanigans, PowerOfEvil was able to go back early. He got an early Doran's ring, and you can see that he's holding his own very well.
I think it's important to compare last game's setup for Misfits compared to this one. Last game was very focused on just try to scale. Not really a good lane to play around. You had to just wait till the late game team fights to really start doing something as Misfits. In this game here, you see a lot more focus on actually having a strong lane up in top with Shen to try and get some push going against Maokai, and then bot lane with the Thresh to support the Xayah. Much more aggressive. It is allowing Misfits to play a little bit more forward, and it will soon allow Maxlore as well to dictate where does he want to go for a gank.
Oh, a little more forward. I'm going to say a lot more forward in that bottom lane. 25 CS almost for Hans Summer. And even though Mithy's had some great headbutt pulverized combos, it's not alleviated the pressure. It's plus 400 gold just from farm that Hans Summer's up. He's going to come back to lane with that BF sword, double long sword, and attack speed dagger. And when we flick back to the items, Zven is significantly further behind. Of course, he is sitting on gold, still needs to back and spend.
And you know, I've wanted to say this for a very long time, but I know there's someone sitting at home now saying, why don't we calculate the Alistar CS on top of Zven CS and then it's almost even? Because with Relic Shield, and this was changed back in Season 4, 2014, it was actually added that when Mithy kills a minion, that CS automatically shows up on the scoreboard as well for whoever gets that Relic Shield stack with him. So that is still calculated in it. I know it's an old school thing, but you know, once or twice you get a tweet about it.
Feel better?
It does make me feel better, because the amount of times I've had to reply to people saying, no, it's not a mistake.
I'm glad you add that, because you are an old school caster, Deficio.
It's been a while.
Has been indeed. Been a while since we've looked at this mid lane matchup. Level 8s on both sides. PerkZ moving forward in front of those minions, as Vedius was talking about earlier. Good chunk damage onto PowerOfEvil, but Maxlore's waiting in the wings. Look north of the river, though, because both Trick and Expect are making their way down. If a fight were to break out, there's more support here for G2. Death sentence again. Mithy kind of ate that one in the face. as Hans Summer uses that plumage and blades and feathers to chunk out the bottom lane of G2.
So Maxlore has now hit level 6. The Shen being level 8 is something you were highlighting earlier, QuickShot, the ability to make plays around the bottom lane with all of this cross-map options. And as you rightly identified as well, Deficio, like, now we get to see more from Misfits. Let's see more of this playmaking because they can rely on other players to carry. We saw this from their quarterfinal and semi-final performance. And with the early laning phase that Hans Summer has built for himself, this is a prime opportunity as Trick is hanging around as well.
Yeah, Trick is really reading the situation here, knowing that Maxlore was on the bottom side. He's still waiting. He just canceled his recall. Maxlore will get spotted now on this ward here. And while there's a Shen ulti available, the fact that there's a Gragas to defend and Alistar ulti makes it difficult to dive.
Oh, such a difficult situation. But G2, they've got that support. Stand United can get interrupted. Actually, Trick gets caught. Spotted, rather, is a better word. Explosive Cask defuses the situation. And there's no further follow-up. At 11 minutes, Misfits, they're climbing ahead. 700 gold. The Dragon in the bottom lane's not the most exciting to fight over. And Misfits, with the ball delivery system we've talked about, with a good scaling options on their team comp and the lead, are in a very comfortable position right now. Remember, G2's team comp, they are reliant on PerkZ and Zven to dish out the damage. They definitely need to make that work out. All right, trading back and forth. The attack, the dissonance, the shockwave onto PerkZ, summon a heal used. And once again, PowerOfEvil standing up toe-to-toe at PerkZ's lane kingdom.
All right, so if we're going to see the Knife Cat do anything, it's going to be right now. You have Shen ulti, that mid lane is low, he has no heal, Flash is up, here we go.
PerkZ is going to get jumped on, flashes away, flash forward from Maxlore. First blood secured. Trick gets the body slam. Stand United buys a few extra seconds of time, and Alphari finishes it. That's a kill to Misfits.
Trick did not have his ulti because he was used before in the bottom lane when he was defending against that potential tower dive.
But finally, we see Misfits get a bit of proactivity as the fight happens bot.
All right, Featherstorm used to buy some time. Lands onto the lantern, flashes to safety. Mithy gets caught up by the box, and Hans Summer tagged by the boomerang blade. Summoner heals are available. G2 unable to get a reply.
And it's so big for Misfits that they're shutting down Lucian in the mid lane. You pick Lucian because he's a strong laner who then becomes a champion that can win these side lane duels and really start to snowball the game. This Lucian is now down in both CS and kills.
And we're seeing the PowerOfEvil special, QuickShot. That is an early rod of ages. Do you know what's going to follow that?
Tell me.
It's going to be a Nash's Tooth. We're going to see it against the triple tank comp. PowerOfEvil likes to get big and beefy, especially when he's not reliant on being the hyper carry. Misfits are putting their faith on Hans Summer to be the true carry of this game.
See the replay again. Maxlore knowing with ulti that he can always kill him. Flash in, secured. Trick here. If he has ulti, Maxlore will die.
100%.
There is no ulti for the Trick.
And of course, much like the previous game, much like the previous weeks in the splits, PerkZ sticking around. Had that flash and that dash, felt he could dodge and outplay. But when that much resources is thrown at you, it was a fairly easy kill for Misfits.
Mithy's hiding up in the top lane, lane swap here from G2, but Alphari is trying to see if he can kill some of the wave, and his bot lane is already at the tower. This top lane tower, though, is fairly low.
Alphari reads the play well. Misfits, they're just going to go for the trade. I think it'll actually be pretty close as to who gets the tower first.
Let's find out what it is. Secured by Misfits. Ooh. They get first blood, they get tower first blood. And they extend that lead ever so slightly. PowerOfEvil unable to connect to the secondary shockwave. That will give PerkZ some extra wiggle room in that lane, but Hans Summer's not done yet. He's going for the inner turret on the bottom lane, while the rest of G2 are starting the Rift Herald.
He knows he can continue this push, even though there is little vision for Misfits around that objective. It is the logical play for G2 to make. So now Alphari trying to play spoiler with 3 other members of Misfits.
It's important to highlight Expect without teleport, so he can't join the fight either. It's just a 1v1.
All right, Expect's going to get a big advantage here onto Hans Summer up in the top lane. Rift Herald helping out. Thrill of the Hunter has been used. Zven spell shields at least one of those abilities. A jump in from Maxlore, he's chunked down. The barrel sends him backwards, gets a battle roar heal before Zven takes him out. That's the first kill of the game for G2 eSports, and the Rift Herald remains alive.
Now Misfits, they tried to force a fight around the Rift Herald, but Unfortunately for them, they couldn't really get on top of Zven. He used a great spell shield to bounce Maxlore off, and then the peel from Mithy along with Trick to just focus down Maxlore without the proper support from his team, without the Shen ulti. This Rengar is very squishy in this early game, which allowed them to shut down the jungler and turn the fight in their favor.
PowerOfEvil was also very far behind here without Shockwave. I think Misfits just bought into the hype a little bit too much and thought maybe they could try and one-shot someone in the back line, but ideally, this engage is where Maxlore will sit and jump in, and then he will get a Shen ulti on him. He might even have an Orianna ball on him, so when he's actually getting to the back line, it's not just Maxlore. There is multiple other abilities and champions following him in towards Zven.
Talking about getting to the back line, for anybody who watched the quarterfinals between G2 eSports and Splice, getting to Zven on the back line was beautiful. A Morgana-Camille combo was what was required to take him down. This is going to be slightly different. A Rengar-Orianna combo. Add Shen into the mix. Now let's evaluate how effectively Misfits can pull it off and how many times they can pull it off, Deficio, because it took a lot of that to kill G2.
Exactly, and the 3 tanks to peel for the backline are very important for G2. Like, Maokai ulti's giant zoning tool, his own knockback with Q, Gragas ulti, like, Alistar with his entire combo is based on pure CC. Like, there are so many ways for G2 to stop Maxlore from actually one-shotting either Zven or PerkZ. And then, while it is double AD carries, if they have enough time, they will burn through a tank eventually.
Yes. But that's the key, right? Enough time against a Rengar-Orianna. And if Rengar and Orianna can find the right angle, it's gonna make the team fights what it feels like, extremely decisive on whether or not Misfits hit or miss. Because if they miss everything, then they gotta run for their lives and get run down by the Sivir Lucian combo.
The thing is, I think that what this Rengar can do as well, though, is just create chaos. Because, yes, you can dive onto the backline, but you don't necessarily have to kill the backline. If you stop them hitting Misfits, then you can play a very similar way to what G2 did in Game 1, where you saw PerkZ dive onto the back with the LeBlanc, and he was just applying pressure. That meant that Summer and PowerOfEvil weren't involved in the fight, and the rest of G2 could just kill the front line. And with Summer having a great laning phase, the Essence Reaver already completed, and he's going to be working towards that hyper carry, you can still rely on him to play in a similar style, while Maxlore just tries to cause chaos.
The big problem, though, with that is that Maxlore is playing a shotgun champion.
Yes.
Like, you have one engage with this ulti, and then you are more or less out of the fight as a Rengar, and the front line of G2 is just much, much stronger than the Misfits front line. So if they're both playing the game where it's just about hitting the first tank in front of you, then G2 will win that with double AD carry and them having the Maokai, Gragas, Alistar combo as their front line. So I think for Maxlore, if he's actually not able to do anything with his engage, I don't think he can add a lot more value in a normal team fight. Maybe he finds some creative ways back into the backline, but he's building full damage Rengar. This is in and one shot or you're done.
It is the finals of the summer split. It is the roster change between spring and summer that was meant to elevate Misfits, give them the communication, give them the control, give them the ability to go to Worlds. Let's see what PerkZ and Expect can do. Alphari got that Stand United available to him, gets a good taunt. Here comes Maxlore, full damage. PerkZ takes down Alphari. Support from the rest of G2 as Maxlore will get run down. That's a double kill for PerkZ, who's already ahead.
Misfits thought that they could get themselves the turnaround, but Alphari did not have flash, and 2 other members of G2 had already started making their way down towards the bottom lane. This was never going to be a 2v2 in the first place, as G2 are able to turn the fight in their favor and get themselves a tier 1 at the bot.
So damage Maxlore and Rengar, damage Shen at the moment. Titanic Hydra is not tanky yet. Misfits don't have a front line, and I don't think they will for a little while yet, gentlemen.
And PerkZ, the one picking up the kills. The Lucian that was actually set behind in his lane, now get a lot of gold. Of course, the Black Cleaver will be next for him.
But notice here that Misfits, they're a little bit behind on the play right now because they tried to get the collapse off too. They ended up losing 2 members, but now Tricky's going for a gank bot.
Oh, he is indeed. Body Slam is going to find Alphari. Going to buy a lot of time with that Spirit's Refuge and flashes over the wall. Mithy got chunked very, very low, and Thrill of the Hunt is available here for Maxlore if he decides to use it.
Oh no, just a few more seconds on it actually.
All right, let's see what he can do. Gets good leaps forward and backwards. Maxlore not going to have the ball just yet. Death sentence onto PerkZ. Manages to bring Hunt Summer with him. It's a 2-on-1, but the damage is great. Stand United is necessary, and PerkZ should go down here. Gets secured by IgNar. The rest of G2 are able to escape.
Trick also died down there. Maxlore played that so well. PowerOfEvil ended up helping him secure that kill, and now Misfits, they're going straight towards the top side.
They may be looking at the Baron right now. It's spawning in just a few seconds. They have multiple members here.
Misfits are starting this one off. Okay, Rift Herald is going to distract G2 in the mid lane. Ignars get jumped on by Expect. Guys, the Baron is being started.
Zven and Mithy on the way. Expect is trying to get in there as well. Here's Mithy.
Death Sentence connects from Ignar, buying some time. Mithy and Zven, they've at least interrupted the Baron. That's 1 kill already for G2. Now in a 4-on-3. Blade Caller not going to be enough. Flash away from Mithy. Defensive flash from Ignar. He's forced to run. G2 stop Baron and get themselves a kill.
They do it once more in a 3 versus 5. They're continuing on with the chase.
They're not even done yet. Expect's going all the way forward. He's got 2,000 hit points to burn through. Hunt Summer and PowerOfEvil trying to turn it around. Are you kidding me? G2 are now starting Baron.
Well, Misfits on the way in here. Let's see. Shen is in base. Ulti is not ready, but TP is for Alphari, so he's joining now.
Oh, what is this shenanigans? Hunt Summer's now on the front line. PowerOfEvil is delivered by Mithy. PerkZ takes him down. G2 eSports, they're behind in gold, but they're ahead in pressure.
G2 get the teleport out from Alphari, and PowerOfEvil, he flashes onto Mithy to get the kill. And Mithy goes pop, knocks him straight back into his team as a hook lands onto Expect. But that's it. The fight's over. G2, they come out victorious.
Playing Orianna against Mithy's Alistar just seems to suck a lot, because you will always find a way to knock you into his own team. This Baron here, there's not enough damage from Misfits, and they couldn't tank it for long enough, so all of G2 we managed to actually collapse in without having 2 members.
Wait, is this live?
Base. This is live.
Okay, Ignar's now being caught out. There's no support from anybody. All of a sudden, what took 30 minutes as a Baron dance in game 1 is now the Baron fight over and over and over in 3 minutes.
I think he was staying around and fishing for a bit of vision right there on Ignar's side. Actually interesting, he's going for Talisman build on Thresh. It's to further buff the all-in engage from Misfits. Just give them a little bit of a push as well when they're diving on, because this Duskblade, it needs to kill something instantly.
Maxlore with Duskblade. Nash's Tooth picked up for PowerOfEvil, the PoE special. Got himself Ninja Tabai as well, and now armor slowly going to start creeping in for Alphari. Misfits' lead is dwindling and shrinking as each minute passes.
Another thing that PowerOfEvil mentioned that he liked with Nash's was also when you play against like these auto attack champions, where he's also able to kind of sit and fire a few auto attacks back in their face. But mainly, it is, as you highlighted, Vedius, it's to try and kill these tanks. It will take a lot of time. Nash's Tooth is not that insane of a DPS increase on your auto attacks, sadly.
But it also reduces a lot of your burst as well. Rod of Ages takes a little while to stack up, and while it's at full stacks now, compared to the conventional Borellos into Luden's Echo, you have a lot less squishy instant kill threat that you would necessarily, especially when you're playing with things like a Rengar and a Shen that you might want to threaten onto the back line.
Especially because when you are against a lot of tanks, what you can do is go Morel and Normicon into Void Staff, and you get a lot of penetration as a second item. With this build, you now have to choose between Deathcap and Void Staff. You want both of them very badly, but you have to delay one of them because you build now Rod of Ages and Nash's Tooth first.
Well, let's see what PowerOfEvil decides to secure. It's 23 minutes in. 1,500 gold lead. Expect is going to jump onto PowerOfEvil. Stand United comes down despite the shockwave being good. Is simply not enough damage. Now Alphari's going to be the target. Flashes forward, catches the lantern. G2 threw everything at Misfits and they get themselves a kill. The tower will be the next objective, and they're able to push Misfits away.
No flash Orianna against a Sivir, a Righteous Glory, and 3 tanks that are really good at starting fights. Every time PowerOfEvil just appears anywhere, G2 are poised and ready to go for the collapse, and they do it once more.
Yeah, that shockwave really did nothing. With no PowerOfEvil, no shockwave, there will not be a Baron fight. I was getting a little excited as G2 are making their way there. Instead, push the wave out, get map control, and resets.
And you can see Maxlore and Alphari here with MR boots, because they feel there's so much CC they gotta avoid as well, despite all the 80 damage coming in from PerkZ and Zven. But PowerOfEvil just getting caught out. No flash, you can't really get out. Alphari will find a lantern for himself.
Joe will be really good here, Deficio. a Zhonya's armor, the ability to go into stasis against all these tanks.
Yes, but you already have a Nash's Tooth.
I know, right?
Well, I'm happy to see control wards on both sides, at very least, gentlemen.
I'm glad you're looking at the bright side there, QuickShot.
I have to. Always, my glass is going to be half full. That's what
when he's casting, by the way,
for.
not in the office, when he's sitting and whining 24/7.
But
anyway,
speaking of the bright side, let's see if we can find a bright side for Misfits, because the goal is still even. It still feels very close, even though G2 seem to have full control over the game. So you look at the gold and it doesn't actually feel like that is the story of the game right now, Deficio.
Right. The fact that also G2 will not actually get punished for having double AD carries as the main damage dealers, because Thresh is not building tanky. Of course, there are barely any ninja tabbies except for the one on PowerOfEvil. The Rengar is building Duskblade, so he's also super
But
squishy.
the bright side for Misfits, Deficio, the bright side.
Well, let's see what the bright side will be.
They haven't lost Baron yet.
Yeah.
Haven't lost it yet. Down to 7,000 hit points. G2, they've got the ability to peel. Teleport used by Alphari is on the hunt, is used by Zven. Thrill of the hunt from Maxlore. He's looking for a target. PowerOfEvil's waiting in the wings. Command Protect can get used as the culling.
Oh, nice
hook.
hook.
A good channel. IgNar doesn't follow it over, but the engage from G2. They've jumped all the way in. The target is Hunsummer. Shockwave catches two. Keeps Hunsummer alive. IgNar's already down. Maxlore's on the back end, trying to be a distraction, but they can't burn through the tanks. PerkZ flashes over the wall. That's a double kill. He's not done yet. Alphari and PowerOfEvil running for their lives. Without Hunsummer there, that Nash's Tooth is not enough. And G2 peel back for the Baron.
And you're seeing the difference in the front lines between Misfits and G2. Maxlore's trying to get a flank. Alphari's waiting for that key ultimate. Whereas G2, they just run through the front door, start the fight, and now they've started the Baron once more.
Baron down to 50%. Maxlore's got full HP and smite available. G2 are going very, very low. Baron is the target. Now PowerOfEvil's trying to back away. Alphari's on the front line. He's got one. That's a second for PowerOfEvil before Alphari goes down. Now Maxlore's jumped in. PerkZ and Zven are going to drop the fight. That's a double-double for PerkZ. Maxlore's going to be able to jump away. But on the bright side,
yes,
G2 haven't got Baron yet.
Exactly. Misfits did stop the Baron, but some very good team fights from G2, and we get to see this big front line just be unkillable when it's a normal 5-on-5. Maxlore was trying to find the flank, never allowed access to the back line, and their Lucian that was 0-1-0 and actually losing lane sits with 7 kills now.
And you can see, so keep your eyes on Maxlore. He's on the right-hand side of your screen. He wants to try and maybe jump onto PerkZ, maybe jump onto Zven. The Shen ulti is not available just yet, but he's waiting. So G2, they go, oh, okay, well, we're just going to engage onto your AD carry. Where's the peel for him? We have so much follow-up. PerkZ can very easily get the follow, and then Maxlore just goes onto Mithy. That is not the target you want to be getting at.
The best Alistar in Europe doing it again. Mithy could have followed his team over the wall, but he waited for Rengar. That meant that PerkZ and Zven, they were safe, and PerkZ, he's then going ham in the fight.
Oh, it looked like PerkZ flashed away from that Shadow Dash taunt. The second half of that replay, let's see how many auto attacks PowerOfEvil gets off.
I mean, that's a great thing to track, but I really want to focus actually on Alphari and his great taunt that allows him to get this turnaround. Because they're trying to focus him down. You see the power of the Spirit's Refuge, and he lands the taunt onto 4 members. That gives the opportunity for PowerOfEvil to get a big QW combo off. But unfortunately, the 2 AD carries are still alive, so they end up losing the fight regardless.
Can confirm that PowerOfEvil barely got any auto attacks off.
Thank you very much, Deficio.
Purely based on his abilities dealing damage right there. And of course, Alphari being quite a boss on Shen in that fight.
I need to see what PowerOfEvil can do this game. Throw the hunt used by Maxlore is going to at least spot out some members of G2.
Yeah, I think actually Maxlore was using it more defensively at first because he might have been collapsed on in that side. Now it is on cooldown, so G2 feeling very confident they can stop Baron again.
All right, on the bright side, Baron's not secured yet. G2, they've evened out the gold lead at 30 minutes. Stand United is already being channeled. IgNar's the target, and Alphari's on the front end. Does not follow the secondary pull of the death
taunt, here it comes.
Flash taunt available for Alphari. Smite is up for Maxlore. On the hunt, thrown down, Shockwave comes out, picked up by G2. In the ensuing fight, can Hunsummer stay alive long enough to get damage down? IgNar and Alphari up on the front end. They're down. It's another double for PerkZ.
In every single one of these fights, you just see both backlines fight both front lines. and it is always G2's carries that are winning. Alphari cannot do the same job that Mithy's Alistar and Trick's Gragas can do, and it is enabling G2 to consistently win out every single time.
So after the Rengar ulti is gone, a lot of Misfits comp kind of falls apart, because they can't actually kill PerkZ or Zven now. It's a great taunt, obviously, from Alphari, but there's no follow-up, because this is supposed to be Rengar.
Doing it all alone. He's holding off 4 members of Misfits and preventing them from even getting anywhere near the Baron.
And that's the thing. What do you do against this big front line? If your main purpose is to kill the back line and you can't get through the front.
Deficio, I want to distract you for a brief moment because I know how much you love the Cloud Drake. You know how much I love Drake's stats. This is the longest living first dragon in Summer Split EU LCS.
And the Baron didn't even die in the last game, and that lasted over 40 minutes as well.
Exactly. Baron was killed before Dragon this game. The previous record was 25 minutes between Fnatic and H2K. And this Cloud Drake may go unkilled in Game 2 of the Summer Finals.
And it's fun also that Lucian here for PerkZ, it's not been about split pushing at all and kind of using your dueling power. It's just been team fight, team fight, team fight, team fight. And he's been able to play so aggressively in all of them because, again, there's just no one who can really kill him.
Well, G2 eSports are on the verge of going 2-0 with Baron with a 4,000 gold lead and with Maxlore's Knife Cat being unable to threaten any of the back line. Misfits are in a difficult situation. The inhibitor is now being sieged on and Maxlore's going bottom lane. He's nowhere near.
The flank, QuickShot. He's waiting for the opportune flank.
I think he's farming Krugs.
Okay, he could also be doing that.
He is farming Krugs while his team is losing the inhibitor. Yes, that is actually happening. Death Sentence catches out, expect. And now Misfits need to defend. Now the flank is starting. Dash over the wall from PerkZ on the hunt is being used. Middle of the hunt coming out as well. Redemption thrown down, expect slowly being chunked. The barrel catches PowerOfEvil. Headbutt pulverized, knocks him into the air before he's shut down. Featherstorm buys a few seconds longer. PerkZ is out of the fight and the rest of G2 pushing onto the second inhibitor. PerkZ unable to find IgNar, but the second inhib falls on the single push from G2 eSports.
Really good ultimate there from Trick, using the flash body slam to get onto PowerOfEvil. That's a lot of the wave clear gone now for Misfits, and G2, they're looking to take a 2-0 lead in this series.
Full channel on the culling. G2 are relentless. 9, 2, and 4. G2 knock over the Nexus turrets, knock over Misfits. They're knocking over the upstarts, the former challenger squad, and G2 0 in the finals.
This game actually started just fine for Misfits. They had pressure in some of the lanes. They were shutting down the Lucian. Maxlore got to farm for level 6, and it felt like they could do more in this game here, but executing this comp in team fights proved very difficult for them. It didn't matter about the double AD carry on the side of G2 because they only had to care about a Shen stacking armor and nothing else. And the big front line of G2 eSports just made it so difficult.
And I feel like we need to see Mithy taken off this Alistar. He is playing too damn well on it. Just getting in the face of Misfits, zoning the entire team, from even being able to play any kind of team fight, is just so impactful and is allowing G2 to come out ahead in so many fights.
All EU LCS support team number 1, Mithy. After all the question marks, he shows up in the semi-finals, or quarterfinals, with a phenomenal play. Alistar into Orianna was the quote this game, Deficio. Nobody should let Mithy play Alistar against Orianna. It just seems he can read the situation so well. But so can the rest of G2. Their whole squad played well. PerkZ and Zven never really had threat. And I think you have to question Maxlore and PowerOfEvil not being able to find those opportunities. It was a risky build, and it didn't pay off.
I mean, that's the thing we said in the draft, is that the execution required to use Rengar comps in professional play is it's so difficult to do. That's why a lot of teams don't even want to play Rengar. Because you got to time all these things like Orianna ball on him, Shen ulti on him, and no one actually blocking his engage. He needs the perfect flank as well that Vedius was highlighting. And it's a lot of factors that got to go your way for it to actually work, compared to G2 groups up as 5 and just say, well, we're going to kill whoever's in front of us.
And that's exactly what they did. Glass is no longer half full if you are a Misfits fan, because G2 are 1 win away from taking home the trophy for the 4th consecutive time. Let's hear from the analysts how they won game number 2.
Well, very convincingly, Trevor. I think that is the TLDR. Fantastic game by them. A lot to talk about here, and I want to zoom in on some of the people that we highlighted before the game, especially PerkZ. He went for his Lucian in this one, and you know, we're not going to lie about it. He hasn't had the best games on Lucian in the spring split so far. So before we get to the facts that we saw in this game, why did you not like it on PerkZ or in the compositions that G2 likes to run before this game?
I mean, before the game happened, I thought that a stable mid laner that didn't need to like necessarily win his lane would have been eventually better. I can't remember like what were banned exactly, but if there's something more stable against Orianna, if he could have Ghost Syndra, I would have liked it more. If he was able to do it. However, like the draft of Misfits allowed Maokai to be way too strong, so he could just run it down, and then Lucian could actually damage. So I think there's like, yeah, it was a big issue that the Maokai became so big and that they had Alistar, so Lucian was able to hit in teamfight. And
Lucian was more valuable. We're going to talk later about how G2 seemed to use the Maokai a bit better. I do want to take a look at the first blood because it was on PerkZ, brought to you by Acer Predator, but it was kind of the only thing that happened. But Yamato, you specifically did want to take a look at this replay.
I feel like when it comes to Lucian, I think what Soaz touched on is the fact that with their composition, they just need safety. Against Rengar, you just want safety, and later on you want to transition into a 1-4 situation. Lucian likes to be in that split push situation where he's pressuring and being the split pusher himself, but in this case they need to play a 1-4, they need to just be the team that forces on Nashor. Syndra is of course much safer in these scenarios.
That it was a first blood goes against PerkZ, but they didn't wait long. G2, they recognized the fact that he couldn't fall too far behind, and I was looking at this side, this next dive bottom lane, as a good move from G2, but you also pointed out that it wasn't enough foresight from Misfits playing with a Shen.
I think Misfits in this case need to recognize that they are heavily behind on tempo. They need to make the defensive play into bottom, not force onto the Shen. They need to walk into mid, catch the mid wave, and then, of course, alleviate some pressure from the Shen. But right now, they're forcing on the bot side. Of course, G2 is heavily ahead on tempo. They're the first people onto the bottom side. And of course, you want to play away from the Shen with the Rengar.
Yeah, we see there PerkZ as Lucian. We have a bit of a comparison between the Summer average and this game. This was definitely a standout game, and I know he's not going to hate us for this one because he played really well. And I think
made some good plays.
Yeah, he made some good plays, and I think he was one of the people that we were looking at. On the flip side, we haven't seen a lot of that mid jungle synergy of PowerOfEvil and Maxlore, which had been so successful coming into this or up until now. Why do you think Soaz that that's not been able to happen?
So first game he played Sejuani into Jarvan, so he needed to have a stable early game sort of. He cannot like go for too many ganks. Even though he was really far ahead because Jarvan got a level 2 gank and then he could farm up and he got his Raptors and like he was just like one level ahead on Sejuani. Yeah. So he could still do things. We saw him doing ultimating mid and getting a pick on LeBlanc, things like that. Second game, well, he have Rengar, so
they tried.
Unless PerkZ is playing on like the wrong side, it's really hard for Rengar to get ganks off mid, and so he can like after 6 obviously, and then they got a pick. But it's not like they can do so much. Like they can only force when Rengar have ult sort of.
And I think they're putting themselves kind of in a troublesome situation by putting that Rengar, and I'm not saying that it's like garbage or anything, but when we saw Maxlore going for the Rengar and then the Kayn was in the series versus the Unicorns of Love when they were already winning heavily, and I feel like maybe in the second game of a best of 5 where you're still trying to adjust and risk being put on match point, it's a bit risky.
I also think that G2 made a really good play in this game. Like they noticed like bot lane was really volatile and they went for a swap on, like even though they didn't get first sight, it didn't matter too much because it just allowed them to play the map instead of like just going for just 2 versus 2 1v1 and eventually getting ganks to like get the turret or something. So they don't want to have like the Rengar and Shen going on bot and eventually trying to dive them or something if they are low HP, so they just swapped and it allowed Maokai to free farm as well, so it was pretty good from G2.
It was a good read on the game, a good read on the macro in that game from G2. And Yamato, you were saying how when you saw Misfits playing and when you've seen them playing these last 2 games, you feel like they've kind of reverted macro-wise to their spring split performance against top teams.
I felt like when you watch Misfits against the lower teams, they were very, very strong macro-wise. Against the stronger teams, I felt like that faltered. And I recognize a lot of that in this series because the first initial game, they had this composition where they had to play it the same way G2 did in this one, play a 1-4, don't play on the sideline, just make sure you're the ones forcing on the Nashor, making sure that you're in the position where you are forcing the team fights. This time around, they have the Rengar and Shen. They don't want to be in team fights at all. They want to be the ones playing on the side, but of course, G2 recognized this very well. And the big difference is, why I don't like Rengar too much is the fact that, you know, the difference is LeBlanc has a TP, the top laner they had as well, of course, has a TP. Rengar doesn't have a TP, doesn't do anything to give you any mid lane pressure. I am not too big a fan of the Kitty Cat.
Not too big a fan of the Kitty Cat. Let's take a look at some fights where the Kitty Cat indeed couldn't also find the flanks that he was looking for. Even though this is not looking too bad in the end, we're going to get a hook on PerkZ. We're going to slow down there because it looks like it is a winnable fight for the Misfits, especially in this particular moment. So who's not doing their job, or who is exceptionally doing their job on the side of G2?
I think like they are really, they communicated really well when they wanted to force on them, and also Mithy is just zoning out the Maxlore, so it's basically a 4 vs 4, but jungle versus support, it's just better on the G2 side, and like eventually Misfits could have won if they are like not that behind maybe, but it just looked like the Maokai was too tanky, honestly, for Misfits to do something.
It's like if you compare the contrast in champions, Rengar against the Gragas in a teamfight situation. Rengar is just he's so small compared to the Gragas. Same with the Maokai and the Shen. And then you have a Lucian and a Sivir, very hard to get onto these people when an Alistar is playing goalkeeper. So they were playing the macro game properly. They forced the Baron and put themselves in a winning position through that.
Yeah, not just the goalkeeper. Iker Casillas style it was from the side of Mithy. He is just having a phenomenal playoffs and phenomenal series on Alistar. So everything's going well for G2. They seem to be peaking very well, and they're set at match point to take their 4th championship in a row. So Misfits with their backs against the wall, their first time playing the finals. Hussein with his one-year plan, and this could be the icing on the cake. What change do they make, Soaz?
Can I change my prediction to a 3-0?
Yes, you can. So nothing.
No, I think it's like, I think in game 2 they sort of went for like their pocket pick sort of with the Shen Rengar. Didn't work very well for them. I'm not sure. I think I would like them more, for them to go more for a team fight comp and more scaling.
Like in game 1?
Sort of the same as game 1, but with like more tools, because they didn't have enough tools in my opinion. Like Maokai was not a tool to do something against them. Also, I'm not really sure about bot lane. I think it's pretty similar, but it's really hard to force on the Sivir team, I feel like. It's much easier to force on Xayah eventually if you have tools. Like, there's a lot of different scenarios. Like, both teams have to go through them and see what's best.
Yeah, I think you don't really see a solution for Misfits. It doesn't feel like it.
There's not an immediate solution.
We need to move on. So do you have one?
They need to step up their macro game, and I think they need to start banning Sivir, blind picking a support that is actually good into the Alistar, and make sure that Alphari is on a carry that
We're getting the fadeaway. It means we have to stop talking. Oh my God, it's do or die for Misfits Gaming as they are on the verge of losing the fight for the championship. We'll see if they can do like the BGs and stay alive in the series when we return.